And then I read the Quran of Muhammad, and I read the Gita of Krishna. And I was reading what the founders, and part of this their inner direction was that I should not read or listen to what their followers had since said, but only what the original person had said, not the followers, or those who came after. So I stuck with that, and in doing this was my first practice of actually doing something that related to God in my life. So in doing this, I began to see that all of these masters were talking about the same thing, and that was basically that it was a path to get to know God better and to establish that same communication that they themselves had. An identity that they had with the highest. And I thought, if they all were in one room together, and I was thinking of Moses, and I'm thinking of Krishna and Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad, they would get along fine. No problem. Why is the world fighting so much over these different religions? Because they were all advocating supreme love. Well, so I was realizing a lot of things, but at the same time, I must say that I was also trying to practice the principles that they were talking about. Not so much ritual and ceremonial type of things, because they weren't really advocating that. They were talking in terms of principles. And I was trying to, at that point, become a more focused person on God. And I was really beginning to feel the impact of what that practice means. It also aroused my mind to start asking questions which I never thought to ask about, and that was about past lives. In fact, I remember when I was reading the Bible, I always read it in the context of reincarnation and past lives. And it made a lot of sense to me that way. I don't know how much it can make sense when you don't have that view also. I'm sure it does, because so many people do follow God through the Bible, and don't believe in reincarnation. But to me, it really put a lot of things together. Well, this was the path that I was progressing on, and I was reading various types of yogas, and Hatha yoga and Raha yoga, and all the different types. And I was really getting quite an education for about 3 years. This went on, and it was not anything that anyone was teaching me. It was just the directions of what I was to do. And also in how I was working and what, I was really felt very much guided. Well, one day, my brother Edward, who was pursuing an acting career, calls me up from New York, where he was staying, and he says, Irwin, I found a book. Quite by accident in the library, I was looking for a book on acting, and I saw this book. It was on the shelf, and it was called Listen Humanity. And I said, you found a book called Listen Humanity? And he says, yes. And I thought, how can a person write a book called Listen Humanity? They must have something they really want humanity to listen to. I said, the title of the book was very unusual, and I wanted to know what this person wanted me to listen to. This is what my brother is saying, my brother Edward. So I said, so what happened? So he says, I read the book, and it's about MeherBaba. And MeherBaba says that he is God in human form, and that he is someone that expressed so much love in this book that he said that I actually read the whole book. He says, because my brother at that time did not read books. And the book was this thick. He said, when I got the book, I felt how heavy the book was. And he said, I didn't have a library card either. So I said, which library was this? He said, this was the New York Library. Well, if anyone's familiar with the New York Library on 42nd Street, it is a building that is an enormous block around and 3 stories high. They must have millions of books, and he happens to pick out this one. So I don't even know how that got in the acting section, quite frankly. I should ask him. But he got this book, and he is telling me about it, about MeherBaba, and I said, who? He says, MeherBaba. I said, could you spell that? And I kept trying to say the name. I couldn't even get the name right, but eventually I got it right. But then I'm thinking to myself, but I'm already receiving inner direction and everything. I wasn't looking for a master. In fact, I didn't even know what a master was, other than the term having been loosely used, as much as the West as you would know it at the time. So I thought, well, I'm not looking for a master, and he's talking about this man. Fine, I'm glad he found something that he could believe in, because he had absolutely no spiritual interest in anything ever. And now he's telling me about this. So some time passed, and one day I get a very strong feeling that I have to go to New York, because the next step for me is to go there, and then something will happen where I will get a communication with God. This was my inner feeling. It was very strong. And I did not relate this in any way to MeherBaba at the time. I was just following my inner directions. Well, for me to go to New York was no simple thing, because it meant that I had to confront my father. And I was living with my father. I was working for my father. And my father was not a person that had an open mind to, the things that I was doing. He's a very practical man, very, worldly, and sort of a self-made type of person. So he was not a believer in these kind of things. So I just knew I had to tell him. So I said, Dad, when I tell him, I said, Dad, I had a very strong feeling to go to New York. And he said, New York? Why would you want to go to New York for? I said, well, Dad, it's a little hard to explain this. But I knew I had to tell him the truth, however it would sound. I said, Dad, I have to go to New York, because I know if I do, I will gain a communication with God. He said, why do these things always have to happen to me? I said, don't take it so hard, then. It's not happening to you. It's happened to me. He says, what do you expect is going to happen in New York? You're going to go up into the mountains. He probably meant the Catskills, the Horse Farm. And God is going to speak to you, and you're going to come down with his commandments. I said, well, I think that's already been done. I said, I have absolutely no idea. I just followed my inner direction, and he said, you can't go. I said, well, why? He said, because you have your job here, you have your family here, you have all your friends here, you have your possessions, everything is here. You don't have anything over there. You'll go there, you won't even have any money. And that was probably, he was right. Probably the reason was because I was working for him. Maybe not. So I said, no, that doesn't matter, Dad. I do have a little money, and I'm going to go, and I want to follow this through. And I said, don't worry if, look, if nothing happens, so I'll come back. End of story. If it comes through, but believe will happen, I have no idea what's going to happen and how it's going to be, then, it'll be a wonderful thing for me and for everybody. So let's just see what happens. So he says, I'm not saying anything further about this. If I say anything further, you're going to rebel, and then you're going to go, and but if I don't say anything, then you'll forget about it. So he told me his psychology, and I just let it go. At that point, I said, well, I did my part, I told him. And a couple of weeks later, quite miraculously, all of a sudden, the people, see, my brother, in the meantime, had come back to Miami, where I was living. And a couple of weeks later, his friends that he came back with were going up there, so I was able to join them, and now I had a ride. And one morning, I'm all packed up and I'm ready to take off, and my father comes over and he says, where are you going? I said, well, I said I was leaving, and now I'm doing it. He says, well, be in touch with me, and he says, please don't go. And I said, oh, but Dad, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it too much. I'll be in touch with you. So with that, I left. And so I went up to New York with $70 in my pocket. And let me tell you, even in 1959, that was not much. You really better have faith in God with that amount. And the only place that I had in mind, even to stay once I got there, was this hotel, which was also near 42nd Street. And it was a place that my brother had been staying at. And I'll never forget their stationery. It said, absolutely fireproof. It made me wonder why they saying this. They were cheap, and it was a good place for me. So I checked in over there, and for 4 days, I did a certain kind of meditation, which was my talking to God in the way that I did then. For 4 days, that whatever God wanted at the time, I still wasn't thinking about it, but whatever God wanted, I was here now, and I had followed through to the extent that I could, and whatever was to be would be. And for 4 days, nothing happened. Nothing at all happened. I felt that my whole meditation was somewhat of fruitless, nothing. But I knew something had to happen, but it wasn't happening. So I went downstairs, and there was a church next door. There was a Catholic church. And my brother had told me that there was a minister, a priest in the church, who worked for the church, that was a very nice man. Why don't I meet him? So since nothing was happening, I thought, oh, well, I'll go to the church. It's just next door. So and this priest was very nice. He started showing me his paintings that he felt would become famous someday. And then he began to tell me about this book called Autobiography of the Yogi. Some of you may have heard it, some of you may have read it. And essentially, the reason why he told me this was because he said it was about a young man who was seeking God and had met a master. And that this Yogananda was the person that had written a book of his own life in his pursuit for God. And he had all these extraordinary experiences. And the kind of divine experiences that this master gave him. And I said, this is really great. I mean, he had experiences where he was able to leave his physical form, and he saw the whole universe emanating from within him, and he had it was like cosmological in the vastness of what he was experiencing, the kind of bliss and the difficulties of his particular form of approach and meditation that he had to do for this and following this master. Well, I was very impressed by this book because I thought, well, here, it isn't just where people just sit and pray all the time and nothing happens. Rather, it's, there are actually experiences of tremendous types that a person could know. And I thought, this really makes a lot of sense. Of course, Yogananda had since died, and so did his master, Sharia Teswar. Oh, there was a lot of things in that book. So this book reminded me of the book now that my brother was telling me about, Listen to Humanity. And I said, you know, he was talking about this master, MeherBaba. I wonder if MeherBaba is as high as this Sharia Teswar, who was the master of yoga masters. And I said, I hope he's at least as high as that. And believe me, I didn't know anything about high and low at the time. It was just my intuitive feeling. So, and I also felt, and this is a very important thing to know, this was not an intellectual decision to go, no, oh yeah, I'd like to read the book now of MeherBaba. I was like on fire. I mean, I was really on fire. It was, you know, Adele knew me at that time, and she was trying to, I was totally on fire. And I went, so I read that book, you know, and it was still before we had met. So I went to read the book, and they wouldn't let you take that book out in the section that they had because the book had already been taken out by somebody. So but they had one copy, and you had to go to the library every day to read it if you wanted to read it. Well, I did. I was reading this book, and I immediately became really impressed by Baba's love, by MeherBaba's love, and his bowing down to the poor and the lepers, and the way that he conducted himself with this group of people that came to live with him. They weren't just people that, you know, as you see these gurus, they sit on the podium and then just people come and bow before them. They go on and give them money or give them, you know, the gurus whatever they have in their possessions, which is fairly common, and we've heard about that. But here now, Baba is inviting all these people to come and actually live with him, his lovers. Maybe 100 or I forget how many at a time were in each group. And he would give them the most enlightened explanations about the path to Godhood. And I was thinking, the path to Godhood? I thought God was reserved for God, not for everyone else. You know, I mean, I felt people could become close to God. And I mean, that was part of my tradition of my belief, part of the religion. You never accepted that any person could be God. I mean, that was not part of the beliefs that I was taught. But Baba was obviously saying something quite different in that manner. But he was saying it in a totally different way. And I was quite impressed by the way he was putting it. He says that everyone is God, but we don't all realize who we really are. And that is what the path is all about, to gain that realization of becoming one with everything and becoming one with God. And that he had achieved, he was the one that had experience of that. And we were still struggling to get that experience. So I didn't feel that this was a closed, circumscribed, or where he was just talking for himself, that I am this and you are not. See, but rather, this is what you're going to be. And it really made a difference in my understanding about God and what the goal could be. But what was really also meaning a lot to me then was his tremendous love. Here he is bowing down to the poor and these others that he would have brought to him, or he would go to them, and he would say these extraordinary things. I am not bowing down because of show, or even as an expression of humility. I am doing it because of my love for humanity. Now this is a person that I have never seen anyone doing like that. I think the only time that I ever heard of such a thing is when I had read in the New Testament about Jesus bowing down to to certain poor at the time. But that was the extent of it. Then Baba would make other statements that when I bow down, it is to my own self that I see in you. And he said, one day, you will see what I will see. What I see in you, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that was, and I kept thinking, you know, he keeps saying that we are all God, but we're not conscious of it. And this was a new way of thinking for me. And I thought, what you were thinking? Because it really shows that there's something more to this universe and to this world than what I've ever thought before. Well, then there was another part of the book. I'm going to sort of skip on because I want to get to the part where I actually met Baba. And the other part of the book that impressed me very much was when Baba spoke about who he is. And he came to that part and he said, I am the highest of the high. I am God the beyond and God in human form. I am the ancient one. I am the one so many seek and so few find. And these words really rang with me. And I thought, you know, I always wanted to meet the highest of the high. And I was really glad that he was the highest of the high, because I finally found out about him and I wanted to meet him. And let me tell you, the fire I really had, it was really a burning issue. It wasn't just, oh, well, yeah, it'd be kind of nice to meet him. That was not it. It was like every atom was drawn down. And I knew inwardly that my direction, my path was being formed now, and that it was going straight to MeherBaba. So my only thought then was, how am I going to get to him? Because I had no money to make the trip. And I was, you know, I wasn't even sure where he was, which, you know, when I finished the book, it was like a whole lot to think about as to what my next step was and how I would get there. I knew I had to see him. But just then, as I'm finished with this book in the library, the librarian comes over and brings over a stack of these Awakening magazines, these issues. And he just plops it down and he says, well, you seem to be so interested in that book. Here's some more about MeherBaba. And I said, but I'm not interested in reading anymore. I already know what I need to know, and it's okay. He says, well, it's there anyhow, and he walks off. So I picked up one of the books, and I'm sort of, you know, flicking through it, and I see in the back, it had the names of the different bottle groups in different parts of the country, and I saw there was one in New York. So, so I wrote down the phone number, and I thought, well, they probably know where MeherBaba is right now, and I'll have to find out from them where to go. So I immediately, you know, I called up Fred Meller's number. They were holding the Baba meetings at her place, and Ella answered the telephone, and I say to her, she says, yes, she was a very sweet voice. Yes, and I said, my name is Irwin Luck, and I'd like to know where MeherBaba is because I'm planning to be seeing him. You know, she doesn't get calls like that every day. So she says, oh, well, that's very nice. That's fine. She says, would you like to come over? We're having a meeting this evening. And I said, well, I just got a job, which I had just got a job too, at the local theater nearby as an usher. And they were playing a movie with Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner, which was about the end of the world. This is suddenly. And she says, and I said, well, you know, I just got this job, and I think I would, besides, I'm not interested to go to meetings. I'd rather just know where he is because I just want to find a way to get there. So she says, well, I think we would like to meet you and see you. So when you're ready to come, we have the meeting every week, and you can just come. I'm thinking to myself, why am I here in New York? I said, well, I'll try and go, but, you know, in the meantime, the heck with this job. I'm not here for this job. So I called up the boss, and I said, sorry, I can't start the job today. But I could start tomorrow. And surprisingly enough, he says, oh, well, that's fine. Just come in tomorrow then. He must have needed ushers real bad. So I went over to the Baba meeting. Well, I remember I get to the door where Fred Ellis' home is, and a very odd thing happened to me that day before I got there. My mind all of a sudden started to worry and worry and worry and feeling quite depressed and worrying. Why am I worrying so much? I don't even know what I'm worrying about. Yeah. But you know, it's the whole sensation of intense worry, not knowing what I'm worried about. This is the first time that ever happened. What is this? You know, and it was like, well, should I go? Am I feeling well enough? And all this. So I said, I'm going, you know. So I did. I went. Now, their door, they had, you know, door in their apartment building. I knocked on the door and they opened the door up. I stepped inside, and as I stepped in, the entire sensation, and this really happened, the entire sensation of this worry and all of this depression lifted like that, and all of a sudden, I'm experiencing an intense feeling of well-being like I had never experienced before. All I could say was like a super sense of well-being. And I thought, oh, it's nice in here. And you know, there was maybe a group of about 15 people that were part of the Baba group at the time. The whole New York Baba group was 15 people. I'm sure someday it'll be like a ridiculously low number, but at that time that's what it was. And I sat down, and they began. I believe Kitty Davy was visiting and had come that evening to give a talk. She was invited by the group as a disciple of Baba for so many years. And at that time, I don't know if you can remember, was she there in that first meeting that I was there? No. It may not have been. It may have been a meeting afterwards. But anyhow, the experience of this was there. And somebody started reading something, and they were reading one of Baba's discourses and everything. And this feeling of Baba's presence now was beginning to come in. It wasn't just a feeling of well-being anymore. It was now a feeling of Baba's presence, and it became stronger and stronger and stronger. It got so strong during the meeting. I said, how come there aren't more people here? This is incredible. I thought if it got any stronger, Baba would actually physically appear because that presence was so intense. And I remember the meeting went on for about an hour or so. And then afterwards, everybody adjourned, and they all went to a local coffee shop to sit around and talk and talk some more about MeherBabaLibrary. And I was very interested to hear everything I could. So Phyllis Frederick was there, of course, Fred Nella, and all the people that were there with Adele and such. There was that group there at that time. And they were just quite delighted to talk about Baba till midnight or past if you could talk so long. But they would, and I'm thinking myself, my goodness, this here, meeting was just terrific. I'm coming again next week. In the meantime, I have to think how I'm getting there. Well, this went on for about 6 months, and I'm thinking, how am I going to get to see MeherBaba? Well, in the course of the first week or so, I wrote my first letter to Baba. And in that letter, I said, "Dear Baba, I want very much to come and see you. I plan to be leaving and in 2 weeks, and I expect that I'll be arriving there to see you. And the only reason I'm writing is because after having spoken to some of your disciples in New York, they suggested I be sure of your location and to write to you first. And hence I'm writing. However, if I don't get a reply in time before I leave, then I will just be on my way and I will come that way." So, I had no money at all. I thought I'd work my way across the ship. That was my thought. However, Baba replied within the 2-week time frame, and he said that I could come. He said, "Yes, you can come and see me for 1 hour only. And then, wherever I am, you will be brought to see me by Naraman Dadachanji." And he and in the letter was the phone number of who I should reach when I get to Bombay, and that wherever Baba would be, I would be taken to him, and for 1 hour. And then I was instructed that I would return back to the States with his instructions for me. And it was signed Love, MeherBaba. That was my first correspondence with Baba. And, oh boy, I'm thinking, how am I going to get there? So I went to the boat docks and was asking around if there's a boat going to India, to Bombay. There was no boats going, and also they had the unions, and it was really well tied up, and it was not a way that it was easy to get there. So the months began to go by. In the meantime, I returned back to Miami, and I remember about 6 months had slipped by, and I'm thinking, this is really bad. Here I am, intended to go there, and look what's happening. Meantime, I got to read all these different books, and I really became a lot more familiar with MeherBaba. Well, one day, a letter comes from Fred and Ella. It was one of the family letters, as it was called then. And in this letter, it says that MeherBaba says that he will be soon entering seclusion, during which time he will not be receiving visitors, nor will he be receiving any communications, except in an emergency, a telegram could be sent. And he would be entering seclusion for 6 months. Well, once again, I said, this is horrible. I am still here, and he's still there, and we do have some communication by way of correspondence. This is not the way. I was on fire, you know. This was not the way it was going to be. So I thought, well, what can I do about it? I mean, I'm absolutely helpless in this situation, and I don't know what to do about it. I just don't have a place to go, and nothing is working out, and I'm stuck. I am totally stuck, and now I'm depressed on top of it because of this letter. So I said, I got to do something. I just have to do something. All of a sudden, an idea comes. What I really should have done in the first place. It suddenly comes. The virtues of desperation. It gives you ideas. What happened was, I get this idea that now I have to write to MeherBaba again. But this time, I am going to write a different kind of letter. I say, Dear Baba, I want very much to have the benefit of your love, your direction, and your guidance. But the only thing preventing me from coming to see you is that I don't have the money to make this trip. And I can't see where money should stand in the way of such an ideal. But I know if it is your will, I'd be able to come, providing it is your wish. Because I felt that, well, if he's God, he can do anything, so why am I sweating? And if he wants me there, and I express this, then something will happen, and, you know, I'll see what he says. So, again, within a very short time, comes back a letter from Baba. And this time, it only had one sentence. It was just one line. Don't worry, circumstances will adjust themselves. Love, MeherBaba. That was the reply. Don't worry, circumstances will adjust themselves. So, I said, this is great. You know, this is really great. Wonder what's going to happen. Well, I will tell you this, that within 2 weeks, in one day, everything all came together. And I was able to leave. I had everything I needed, all the money, everything that I needed to go. It was a done deal. And I got the tickets, and I was off. Well, this was an amazing thing. And again, there's a story about that. I don't know how much time do I actually have?
All day.
How much? 15?
Oh.
Okay. Well, all right. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to tell you about the part where my father called the police to stop me. I'm going to tell you the part about how my brother was also going to go and forfeited his trip at that particular moment because of my father's trying to prevent us from wasting money on airfare, quite frankly, to see this master, to see this God, what he would say, this God who lives in India, when he says, why can't you pray to God here? Why do you have to go there? And he went on with all of his, ideas and things. So I won't tell you that whole part. And what happened with the cops after they found out the story of what was really going on. Well, that part I'm leaving out. But why? Because I want to get to the part of telling you what happened when I met MeherBaba. But we'll take up that part again. We can save that for another time. So I got to India now, and I was in the car with Meher, one of Bobby's close men, who drove me from Bombay to Pune. Baba was staying in Guru Prasad, a beautiful big place in Pune. It was summertime, it was May, and
what year?
Huh?
What year?
It was in 1960. In 1960 in May. And Baba looked not a little bit younger than this picture that you see back there. When I saw him, I'm sorry I don't have one of the books with pictures. I can show you how it looked to me. But then Baba was standing outside as the car drove in to the Guru Prasad driveway. And it was a place that the Maharani had turned over to Baba's use for a month or whatever time Baba really needed, during the time he was in Pune. And whenever I saw Baba, it was always in Pune. Well, anyhow, the car pulled up, and there's Baba standing in the outside the door on the veranda, and I see Baba is motioning like this. And Benji says, Baba is calling you. In the meantime, we had stopped to get this garland. He asked me on the way, he says, do you want to get a garland for Baba? I said, no. He says, why? Would you like to present something? I said, no, I'll be the garland. So he said, well, it would be nice. All right. So I got this huge girl. I said, I'm getting a girl, and I may as well get a real big one. So I'm with my girl. In the meantime, Baba goes into the house, into one of the rooms, and I followed him in there, and Baba's sitting in his chair. He was sitting in a chair, and there was about 15 people in front of him. And everybody was seated on the carpet, and I was motioned to come and sit next to Baba, and there was Dr. Duncan, William Duncan, who was sitting there in the room. And so there was men and women with it. And Baba just, had his arms out like this, and I came right up to him, and I put this garland up on his head, over his head. And as soon as I put it over, Baba just reached up and pulled it and gave it to someone and just grabbed me up. And when he did, he kissed me on both cheeks at the same time, one time, and then he kissed me on the other cheek, and I kissed Baba too. And Baba had me just sit near him, and one of the first things he asked me was where my brother was, because where my brother was. Can you hear me? Am I speaking too loud?
No,
okay.
Louder.
Huh?
Louder.
Oh, louder. I'm sorry, I would have talked louder. So Baba then says, where is Edward? And, through his gestures. And I said, Edward was unable to come because my dad had stopped him from this trip and called the police and did this and that. And went over the story somewhat briefly. And Baba said, it would have been better had you both come together. You would have benefited more. But he said, now, don't worry about it because Edward will benefit as much as you will, even though he was not able to come. So I said, well, anyhow, so I said, oh, well, I thought that was very good. Then Baba said, send him a telegram and tell him what I said. And actually, I was really pretty spaced out at that point. And it was hard for me to focus on telegrams when I was now sitting in front of Baba. So Baba called Francis Bravazan. He said that Francis to help me to write up a telegram for my brother. So that telegram went out. And then Baba said, he said, how did you come? So I said, Baba, it was your will. And Baba motioned like this, to stand up and to repeat it to the group that was present in the room. Am I getting too low for you?
That's okay.
Yeah, to repeat it to the group that was in the room. And so I did. I said, I am here because it is MeherBaba's will. And of course, I knew how true that was because once I got the message, everything worked out. It's amazing how things work out where instead of nothing ever happening, something really does happen. And it's a good, it makes you think that things can work. Well, one of the men in the back raises his hand, and Baba points to him, and this man says, "But how did you get the money to come to be with Baba?" Apparently, some of these people must have been there when my letter was read. Oftentimes, letters were read in front of whoever was present at the time Baba's mail would get read. So I thought, well, he really doesn't understand that it had nothing to do with how the situations developed. It could have been anything. It would have worked, and I would have been there. So just then, Baba was like this, and he says, "That is not important. The way he said is how it came." And with that, it confirmed for me that, yes, it was Baba's will. Then, at some point, Baba said, he sort of turned to me somewhat casually, and he said, "You were sent to me by another master." And that's all he said. And then he went on with, what was happening, because there was different things going on with different people, while he was gesturing like that. And I thought, well, I don't know who the master is, but I can feel grateful for that. But now I'm with Baba, and that's what matters. I didn't think, oh, well, who is this person? You know, or whether he's a living now or whether I was sent to him and things were set up 1,000 years ago that I should meet the avatar now because the time was set up by some master for that. Or, I mean, I had no way of knowing that. And Baba didn't explain it any further, and it didn't seem really important. Then at another point, Baba said, if I give you knowledge, what would you do? Because I was thinking throughout the time that I was with him that I really want to know him as he really is. Not just his form. His form was not the reason why I came, actually. I wanted to see him in his form, but not the reason why I came. I wanted to know him in his infinite state, as he really is, so that I could know myself and know what I really am, and experience the truth, the reality of what I am of this universe. So Baba said, if I give you knowledge, what would you do? And I thought, Baba, if you give me knowledge, I'll know what to do. But really, and Baba's face at the time was, you know, just, all right, you know, I wasn't trying to be smart about it. I really meant it. I really meant it. And Baba just like that. Then there was I guess some time had gone by, and Baba went like this, what time is it? And I said, so somebody said the time, and then Baba looks at me again, and he says, how long were you to be here? So I said, Baba, you said I could come for 1 hour. And you know, I'm amazed I remembered it, because that was something he had said in the very beginning, in the very first letter I received, which was like a half a year before. And Baba had this very humorous and puzzled look on his face. And he says, how can that be? It's already 2 or 3 hours, and you're here, I said, only 1 hour? And you're here already 2 or 3 hours, so how can this be? And he's pointing to this one and to that one, and each one he's asking, how is that possible? Nobody, I don't know, Baba. You don't know. He realized that nobody knew anything. Then Baba looks at me, how is it possible? I said, I don't know either. Well, then Baba became serious. He said, all right, I want you to come every morning at 7:30. Meherji will pick you up from your hotel. He will bring you here, and then you'll remain with me and you stay close to me. And then for lunch, he'll take you back to the hotel and then bring you back again until I dismiss everyone. And then he gave instructions for me to be taken to a different place in Pune each day. The first place to be the tomb of the perfect master, Hazrat Babajan, which I was taken there. And that was also quite an experience. So my 1 hour visit now became an indefinite stay because there was no time limit, which suited me just fine. Because when I was with him, I said, well, if anybody can be the avatar, he definitely fills the book in my case for whatever I can imagine the avatar to be as far as divine or being God. But Baba was very, very I mean, he was such a perfect host. He was perfect in many ways, but even as a host, I was so well taken care of during the time of that stay and during the things that happened. We went and, see, when Baba was visiting the homes of his lovers, Baba liked to go to the homes of his lovers. He was not just someone that stayed in seclusion. While he had seclusions, he didn't just stay in seclusion. There were times when he liked to go visit his lovers. Come, go to their house and be with them. So one day we went to the house of Madhusudan. Madhusudan would come and sing these incredible songs, the Baba, beautiful songs. And I really liked the singing a lot. And he, so one day, Baba wanted to go to the home of Madhusudan, who he had never gone to his home before. And like all things with Baba, there's always some story. And what was it with Madhusudan? Madhusudan had said that Baba should not come to his home. Not come. Baba, he would go to Baba, but he didn't want Baba to come to his home. And Baba said, why? You don't want me to come to your house? You really telling me you don't want me to come to your house? Madhusudan said, but Baba, you can't come to my house. So Baba would be so innocent. Why can't I come to your house? He said, because Baba, when you come, you're like an elephant. And I have such a tiny house, and you bring so many people that there's no space for all of these people to fit into my house. So he had this apartment upstairs, it was a fairly small. So he said, how can you come to my house? You won't fit. So Baba said, all right. He didn't say anything. But this particular day, Baba had made some secret arrangement with Madhusudan's wife that he would come as a surprise visit. And I think it might have been Madhusudan's birthday as well. See, so now this was an occasion. So, so Madhusudan didn't know this, and now all of us, and of course Baba's entire entourage and all of his disciples and everybody else had to be there, and I was there too. So with trespassing up this staircase, this little narrow staircase, and everybody's coming, and I was walking right behind Baba, and we'll come into the house. And it was amazing, everyone fit, they were all in there, everybody there. And Madhusudan was so surprised when he came home, he saw Baba sitting there in a chair that they had for Baba. And Baba said, Madhusudan, why don't you sing for me? And he sang. He couldn't say anything. It was too late to say anything. And Baba visited various places, and one place we went to was the home. It was a little girl's orphanage, and that was a very touching episode because Baba embraced all of the teachers. First he embraced all the children, and then he embraced all the teachers. And he gave a short message. And when I was in the car, interestingly enough, because when, Baba had told me to stay close to him, so that when we left the orphanage, we were, we went downstairs into the car. And I had to go around because there were people that got in front of me, and so Baba went into the car, and then there were some people, somebody got into the car also with Baba, and then I got in, which I thought, well, that's fine, So there was someone sitting between me and Baba, and Baba had said that I should stay close to him. So anyhow, the car begins to drive off, and what happens, Baba puts his hand on the driver's shoulder to stop, and the car stops. And Baba opens his door, and he gets out, he walks all the way around the car. And we all move over one seat, and Baba sits right next to me. So I thought, this is really something. And it was hard for me at that time to really get my eyes off of Baba. And I couldn't help be staring at him. And I thought, it's not appropriate thing to stare like that. But there was something, I don't know, there was some kind of, it was like that. It was just really difficult. And Baba said, at one point, he said that he pointed for a fan to be given to me. So I took this fan, and Baba went like this, because in the car, the sun would come through the back window. So Baba so that I should put the fan behind him. And so I was sitting, and there's Baba sitting there, and I'm just holding the fan like this. And naturally, now I had to look at him because I was given a job. It was the job. My job was to keep the fan there, and to do it, I had to see him in order to, to do the fan right. So now it was a natural thing. It was no longer, where I had to feel like I was staring at Baba. And at one point, I'm thinking, here I am with somebody that is totally one with the whole cosmos. How can I be just me? So limited in consciousness compared to someone who experiences the infinite knowledge, the infinite power, the infinite bliss, the infinite state of being everywhere and in everything. And this is just his shell, this human form. And I'm thinking this right there and then, you see. And I'm thinking like this. And Baba, there was no words that I said to Baba, but then Baba just put his hand on my knee like that. He just went like that. And he gestured. And Erich, who was in the front seat, was reading, turn around and read Baba's gestures. And he said, are you willing to pay the price? That was what he said. And I knew he was referring to what I was thinking about. So I said, Baba, I didn't say anything actually at first. And I started to think about this. And then I remember I started to envision some sort of burning at the stake as part of the price, you see. I mean, I was getting these sort of fantasy thoughts of, these amazing things, whether I could stand the suffering. And as I'm, this kind of thoughts are coming into my mind, Baba just goes like this again, and he said, no need to answer. He didn't say, nothing was translated, but it was obvious. There was no need to answer and think about it. So, this was one of the incidents. Now, yes?
They're planning on showing the film?
Oh, yes.
10 o'clock?
Is it, if time is up, I can stop. All right, well, then in that case, maybe I'll just say one thing about the film which you may find interesting. This production, this is a film which took a long time to make because we had just bits and pieces that were gotten from Dr. Deshmukh. Some of it is explained in the introduction. The film was all shot by Dr. Deshmukh. And Dr. Deshmukh was a man that was the same person that had written the discourses of MeherBaba. I don't mean written and Baba wrote it, but it was edited by him. And he was a very unusual type of person because he had a string of PhDs and all kinds of he was such a scholar. He had such a string of things like you wouldn't believe in front of his name. But when he would be with Baba, Baba would always somehow make him feel so foolish. Like a foolish person. And yet, he was totally oblivious to this. He would set his mind on something and he would and he'd go for it. And in the case of this movie, there's one section in there which you're going to see, which pertains to the must, the God intoxicated, and the spiritually advanced persons. And these, in that scene, you see, was a rare thing because Baba had journeyed to see these musts. And in that scene, in those scenes, he never allowed anyone to ever photograph anything that he did with these musts because there was so much love, and there was, it was so tender and so, his love for the must was so much that it would be like having cameras come into your bedroom. It was that intimate, and Baba would never allow to film him with the must. But this time, Dr. Deshmukh was insisting, and he said, Baba, but the world will want to know one day what it was like when you had these and there's absolutely nothing that we've ever had filmed of it. So as a result, the footage had been shot, and Baba permitted it. He said, all right, this time. But actually, there were just little pieces of clips and films. It's not like the way you're going to see it here. This took a lot of time to draw out these scenes so that you can actually see something happening. And so we have what we have now on this film. But the original footage maybe was only about 5 or 10 minutes in length. And you'll see something here that's about 20 minutes long. So I'm not going to go into anything further about how that's done, but you'll see in this reel, I think they're showing reel 1 of the movie of MeherBaba, Avatar of the Age, The Human Side of God, as a subtitle.
Well, thank you.